outside real quick. I'll be right back.
Copy.
camera will be up here, obviously, and they'll only be able to hear the microphone from me talking. So, good. Good morning, everybody. My name is Lieutenant Joe Bottoms. I'm here with the Modesto Police Department, and this is our first ever community military equipment report. We're required to do this per Assembly Bill 481, and we're excited to do it. We have always been, we've always preached transparency in this department, and we want to give everybody opportunity to ask questions about any sort of equipment we have, and then later on we're going to invite everybody to the back lot, and you guys can actually see and get your hands on what's deemed military equipment. Okay. So a little bit how today's going to go. I'm going to, in a second, I'm going to introduce some of the other lieutenants that run the specific units that oversee this equipment, and then we're going to talk about what Assembly Bill 481 is. We're going to talk about what equipment we have, and then what we used last year, and then we'll be more than happy to take any questions and in the room or online. So I'll invite the first lieutenant up here, Lieutenant Stanfield. You want to introduce yourself and tell us what unit that you supervise?
Good morning. My name is Lieutenant Steve Stanfield. I supervise the crisis response team, the hostage negotiation unit, as part of our CNT outreach, and I oversee our command post, which is out in the back parking lot. We encourage everybody to take a tour through it and take a walk through our command post and kind of see what we utilize that for during critical incidents. Thank you.
And Lieutenant Payne.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Felton Payne. I oversee our mobile field force unit. What mobile field force does is we're kind of on the front line when there is civil unrest, and we protect people's rights to speak freely on whatever they are speaking for. So, good morning.
And before we get started with anything else, I'd like to invite the chief up to say any words he'd like to say.
Well, good morning, Brandon Gillespie, Police Chief for City of Modesto, and just a privilege to be here, and thanks for the community members that got up this morning and came out, and those of you online. We're really excited to show you what we have as far as the equipment here at the police department. Some of it, like Lieutenant Bottoms said, is deemed under AB481 military equipment, and I know that's a scary term often, but I think what you'll find is that the equipment that we have is generally used, very commonly used in law enforcement, but we want to be able to engage with our community, show the equipment we use, ask questions, and make this a very open and transparent process, because nothing that we use here is a secret in the way that we protect our community. So excited to have this first ever event, excited that we have some people here in the audience and some online, and thank you, Lieutenant Bottoms, for putting this all together. So we're excited. Thank you.
All right, so we'll get started. First off, I wanted to talk about, in just simple terms, what AB 481 or Assembly Bill 481 is. Last year, the state of California deemed that certain equipment that the police department uses is considered military equipment, and we'll go over all that stuff that we have here in a second. The way we purchase it, the way it's documented, the complaint procedure, the training, all of that is documented in our military equipment use report, and that's all deemed part of AB 481. The way we purchase it has to be approved through City Council, so that whole process of purchasing, whether it's chemical agents or bean bags or flashbangs or UAVs, that all has to be approved by City Council now per the Assembly Bill, and then it's documented in a report annually, its usage, its training, any complaints, and all that is documented. So that in a nutshell is Assembly Bill 481. Now we're going to go over what we have, and then you guys get to see it here in a little bit. Unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, commonly referred to as drones. We have several of them. One is we have 4 DGIs, 6 DGIs, and various sizes and used for different things, but you'll see them out there. The purpose of these UAVs are major collision investigations, the search for missing persons, search and rescue operations, crowd control situations, perimeter searches, natural disaster management, crime scene investigations, where they'll actually get up and take photographs from an aerial perspective of different crime scenes, SWAT and tactical operations, checking behind cars or underneath porches and things like that. Authorized use, the only authorized operators is explained in policy 613, and they have to have the training to go through training in order to use it. The lifespan of these UAVs are 1 to 3 years. Also, we have robots, and you'll see the robots in the back lot here in a minute. These robots are primarily used in SWAT operations. Oftentimes, we'll send a robot into a house before operators will go into the house for safety reasons. They have cameras, they have microphones, so we can see what's inside the house prior to sending actual cops into the house. The authorized use is I'm the one who authorized the use. I'm the SWAT commander, so I will give the go-ahead to use these robots on specific SWAT operations. The lifespan is 5 to 10 years, and as far as training goes, they're not easy to use. It's we find that the cops that are good at video games are pretty good at the robots. So the same type of controller, and they receive training before they use those. You'll also see armored vehicles. There's 2 armored vehicles outside. One is a 2004 Lenco Bear. That's our primary armored vehicle. We've had it since it's coming up on 20 years now. And the other vehicle you'll see is called a Peacekeeper Protected Response Vehicle. You'll see that one outside as well. The purpose of these is to provide protection for operators and for officers when there is a high-risk situation. The ballistic capabilities are greater than patrol cars, obviously, and you'll see that, and you'll be able to crawl through that if you'd like. The Peacekeeper has a dual role. You'll see some things on the side that says "Smile, you're on camera." We put cameras on those, and we park them in certain situations, like say there's a suspected drug house in the neighborhood. Well, sometimes we park that thing right across the street from it, because we can, and watch them get a little nervous when they're dealing drugs, right, before we arrest them. Often, or if there's vandalism, graffiti, things like that, homeless things that need to be taken care of, where we can't designate an officer there 24/7, we can park that car there or that vehicle there to provide it as a deterrent. The mobile command post is the giant trailer out in the back lot. That's deemed military equipment. You'll be able to walk through that today. It's a 2000 Eagle 5 fifth wheel. It's a monster. It's pulled by a 2001 Ford F550, and it's used for situations where there'll be an extended period of time where officers will be on scene, whether it's decisions that are made inside there as far as how the operation will go. If we need to put a bunch of lieutenants and captains and chiefs together off-site, it's a way that we do that. Keep them out of the weather if it's raining or if it's cold or the sun is unbearably hot. We're able to organize ourselves off-site. Expected lifespan of that is 20 years, and we're over that. And the training, you have to have a special driver's license to pull that monster because it's a big one. So there's officers here that have their Class A that can drive that for us. M16A1 select fire rifles. So over 20 years ago, the government had a program where we could obtain old Vietnam era rifles. And what we did with those is we brought them in and we turned them into training rifles, where we've taken apart the the parts of the gun that actually shoot real bullets, and we use training rounds, or we call them simunition rounds. It's basically a little soap pellet that we can shoot at each other in order to train and become more accurate and hone our skills when it comes to tactics. So we don't use those rifles in the field. They're only for training purposes, and we're actually trying to get rid of them. But in order to get rid of them, there's a lot of hoops to jump through with the federal government to basically destroy them or give them back. So, but they're only used for training purposes. And the authorized users are the SWAT team members, and then of course they have to complete a 40-hour urban rifle course in order to use them. Flashbangs, tear gas, pepper balls. We have 5 pepper ball launchers, and they shoot a non-lethal pepper ball. It's basically a paintball gun, and you can go and buy one right off the shelf in several places in Modesto. There's no difference in what the pepper ball gun is as to what you can buy off the shelf for a paintball gun. So we have 5 of those. Pepper ball Tipman carbine launchers. We have 2 of those. It's a compressed air launcher. It's similar to a paintball gun. Pepper ball cartridge projectiles, which is basically a paintball with a pava, which is a natural occurring pepper substance. We have 3,000 rounds of those, and they shoot out of the pepper ball gun in order to, it's used as a de-escalation tool. Oftentimes we'll find suspects hiding in attics or in cars and they don't want to come out. Well, rather than send officers in there with guns right away, what we'll do is we'll be able to shoot pepper balls in there, and it becomes very uncomfortable very quickly, and oftentimes they'll come right out and give up. So it's a way to de-escalate the situation prior to sending officers in. Carbine Tactical Systems Mini Flashbang. Flashbang is a light and sound diversion device. It creates a bright, brilliant light and a concussion sound that allows officers to obtain the tactical advantage prior to entering a room. We train with the flashbangs. Officers and SWAT operators train with the flashbangs on a consistent basis, causing us to be able to work through that concussion and that light. It's a way to de-escalate when a suspect is allows us to get a jump on the suspect and de-escalate the situation prior to going in with a gun. We have 44 of those currently. Combined Tactical Systems, or CTS, CS gas canisters. We have 24 of those. It's a chemical agent that is an eye irritant and skin irritant, and they're used when we will launch or project those into houses in order to encourage someone to come out prior to officers going in. It makes it very uncomfortable. There's no lasting damage to the person. Everybody in this room has been exposed to tear gas, commonly referred to as tear gas or chemical agents. It has a very high success rate, which allows us to encourage someone to come out of the house. The worst thing that we can do, or the last thing we ever want to do, is send officers in with a gun, with a suspect with a gun. That's not what we want. We want to encourage someone to come out, and therefore the chemical agents are used to encourage that. 40 millimeter CS liquid barricade ferret rounds. It's similar to, it's a chemical agent. It's shot out of a shotgun. It is a less lethal round. All it does is it projects a chemical agent into the air and onto the walls, and encourages someone to come out. You have a question, Sharon?
Yeah, we have a question from Matthew. He wants to know if a robot can be used to breach a door or a wall.
The answer is yes. None of the. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I have to repeat the question. We're going to work our way through this. The question was, can a robot be used to breach a door or a wall? And the answer is yes. One of our robots has an arm on it that can turn knobs, but none of our robots have explosive breaching capabilities. The sheriff's department has a bomb squad. They have robots that can handle explosive charges, things like that. But the ones we have and the ones you'll see out in the back lot, with none of those will do that. But the arm on the robot will turn knobs and things, and that's out in the back lot. So, did that answer the question? Okay. If you have more questions, just raise your hand and we'll get through it. Defense technology, 40 millimeter warning signaling munitions. There's 15 of those. It's a 40 millimeter, it's basically a flashbang that gets shot up in the air. It's a loud boom and a bright light, similar to a firework. It's used as a distraction or to encourage someone to leave the area. 40 millimeter aerial warning flashbang, similar to that. There are eight of those. Same description. 40 millimeter riot CS smoke canisters, which are it's just a chemical agent like the first one I talked about. It's a skin and eye irritant. It's used to encourage someone to leave the area or to leave a house. There are 38 of those. A white smoke canister, 18 of those. It's just like it sounds, it's a canister that projects white smoke in the air. The smoke is harmless to breathe. There's no irritant whatsoever. It's just a visual barrier. And those are used when, on particular SWAT operations, when we need sometimes move SWAT operators from one area to the next, but we don't want the bad guy or the suspect to see us move across the open area. We'll put smoke into the air to hide our movements. Because when they're moving, if he's trying to shoot at us or the suspect's trying to shoot at us, we don't want them to be able to, get us in their sights, so to speak. OC aerial canisters, there's 14 of those. Again, it's a aerial canister that projects OC spray, or it's a chemical irritant used to encourage someone to leave the area or leave a building. Again, these are used as used for people who are self-destructive, dangerous, or combative subjects, riot or crowd control, and civil unrest. Circumstances where a tactical advantage can be obtained, like I talked about. Potentially vicious animals, because we love animals, and the last thing we want to do is use something lethal against a dog. Oftentimes we find that chemical agents will work better, and we can get our job done and protect the animal. Training exercises and approved demonstrations. Obviously, it goes without saying, anybody that uses these items is fully trained by certified instructors within the department. Projectile launch munitions and platforms, 40 millimeter launchers and 12 gauge shotgun launchers. When I speak about these are launchers that are specific to less lethal. They are not shooting a lethal round. It is shooting a foam round or a beanbag round, and you guys will have an opportunity to get your hands on those out in the back lot. It is a less lethal round. This Remington 870 less lethal shotgun, there are 37 of those. Those are beanbag shotguns. You'll see a bright orange stock on those, so it differentiates between that and a lethal shotgun. A 12 gauge Super Sock beanbag round. There are 350 of those, and that's the actual round that comes out of the less lethal beanbag shotgun, and you'll be able to see those there. It's basically, like it described, a sock you would put on your foot with like little bean pellets inside, and that's a beanbag round. Defense technology 4 millimeter single shot launcher. There's 2 of those, and that is similar to the beanbag shotgun. However, it shoots a 40 millimeter round, which is bigger, slower, but you'll be able to see those out there also. Again, these are used in less lethal situations. And when I speak about less lethal situations, it's important to recognize these are used to de-escalate the situation prior to sending officers in with guns. An LMT 40 millimeter single shot launcher, which is exactly like the other one I just spoke about. It's just made by a different company. There's 4 of those. CTS 40 millimeter foam baton rounds. There are 19 of those. It is the actual round that is shot out of the 40 millimeter launcher. It's made out of like a foam, so the impact is not lethal. It's like a hard foam rubber, and we'll be able to see that. It's not a rubber bullet like you hear on the news. It is not that. It is a foam round. It's big and fat, so it's not. There's no penetration involved. It's like a big thud, and so we'll show you that outside. Safariland 40 millimeter rubber baton, similar to the foam baton round. Just like I said, the Defense Technology Stinger rubber ball rounds. These are Felton, do you want to speak on those?
I missed the initials.
Defense Technology 40 millimeter Stinger rubber ball rounds. There are 19 of those. Those are shot out of the 40 millimeter. They're similar to the foam baton rounds, am I correct? Yeah, so some of these items are specific to mobile field force, and that's why I asked Lieutenant Payne to speak on those. Again, the purpose of these less lethal munitions are designed to limit the escalation of conflict where the employment of less lethal force, where lethal force is prohibited or undesirable. They're used on suspects or subjects that are self-destructive, dangerous, combative, riot, crowd control situations, civil unrest, circumstances where tactical advantage can be obtained, or potentially vicious animals. And training, of course. I would, it seems like a lot. It seems like we have a lot of different rounds and things like that. I can tell you 3/4 of these rounds, 3/4 of the gas, 3/4 of the flashbangs are all used in training. Okay, and we're going to go over here in a minute of how much we actually used in the last year, because I think that's important. The majority of our stock, the majority of our rounds are used in training, so we know how to use them. All right, equipment usage. This is what was actually used. Several pieces of the listed equipment were used in the Straight Pride Rally in 2022. We separated that versus everything else because it was easier to understand. So I'll go over everything that was used in the Straight Pride Rally, and then we'll go over everything else that was used. In August 27th, 2022, UAVs were deployed at the event and maintained video surveillance and to feed back to the command post, so we could see what was going on from a mobile location. The Peacekeeper armored vehicle, which is outside, was used to transport members of the mobile field force team back and forth. 3 aerial warning munitions were deployed as the crowd failed to disperse. These munitions were deployed from a 40 millimeter launcher, just like I spoke about. The command post vehicle, which is out in the back, was deployed at a strategic location so we could maintain a mobile command post. A beanbag munition was deployed on a subject who was physically resisting officers and the mobile field force. The munition was deployed from a Remington beanbag shotgun, and I spoke about those. Pepperball projectiles were deployed to disperse the agitated crowd. These projectiles were deployed from a listed pepperball launcher. And that was the items used during the Straight Pride Rally in August. The following items were used throughout the last year. We had 45 operational UAV deployments, so 45 times we put a drone up in the air, and I talked about different situations, but some of them, again, were for search warrants, tactical operations, perimeter searches, crime scene aerial photography, calls related to firearm use, clearing roofs. You can imagine how that comes in handy when if we think someone's on a roof, rather than put an officer up there on a ladder where it's dangerous, we can clear that roof with a UAV. And then, of course, the Straight Pride Rally I already talked about. There were 24 deployments of the Lenco, or the armored vehicle we call the SWAT rig, and that's outside. 20 of those were for SWAT operations. 4 of those were used when the Lenco was taken out, but SWAT hadn't been activated yet, and then the incident resolved without the activation of SWAT. So oftentimes that thing, it'll pull up in front of a house, and the suspect will say, okay, I'm gonna give up, and he comes right out. So it's a way to de-escalate the situation with just a visual tool, right? It's big and it's black, and that's the purpose of it. You know, people see it and, okay, I'll come right out. So that works well. The Peacekeeper was used 14 times. 2 of those were for SWAT tactical operations. One was for the Straight Pride event, and the other one was like I spoke of before. Or sorry, the other 13. No, I'm sorry. The other 11 were used in the Armadillo program. And like I spoke about, when you have a neighborhood or a house or a business that's getting vandalized or suspected drug sales or things like that, it's used as a deterrent, a force multiplier, so to speak, where we can park it. Smile, you're on camera. It seems to drive crime away. It's kind of weird. So it works really, really well. There were 2 deployments at the command post, one for the Straight Pride event and one for an operation when it was an extended operation when a suspect was inside a house and he was shooting guns out at officers in the neighborhood. There were 3 deployments from chemical agents in 2022 by SWAT operators. They're listed in the military use report. And I forgot to say, this whole report has been on the website for weeks, open to the public. Anybody can view it. And like I said, I'm going over this rather quickly. I'm not reading it word for word, but anybody is able to view this. 4 deployments of flashbangs during SWAT operations. 7 deployments of the robot during SWAT tactical operations. 4 deployments of less lethal beanbag munitions. 1 was for a SWAT operation. 1 was for a wanted suspect to gain compliance after a vehicle pursuit. 1 was used to break a window prior to deploying pepper ball. We spoke about pepper ball and what that does. And 1 was used during the Straight Pride event, which I already talked about. There were 9 deployments of pepper ball munitions. The munitions we already spoke about. 6 of those were as the Straight Pride event, like I said. 3 of those were used for barricaded subjects, attics and cars and things like that. It's a great tool when to make it uncomfortable for someone to stay in a small confined area. And then the use report goes into every single SWAT operation and how the Lenco was used, if you'd like to see that. We want to be obviously completely transparent. After an inventory audit, the below items were not captured on the 2022 report. They will be added to the 2023 report. 1 was a UAV that Fire had borrowed. And funny, they didn't tell us they were borrowing it. But we got it back. So we have a joint UAV operator that goes back and forth with them and us. And like when the floods happened or a big fire happens, UAV is an outstanding tool to get an aerial perspective. And so we work closely with the fire department with that. And 1 was a 40 millimeter round and rubber baton round that was unaccounted for, but is currently accounted for. There were one of the other things that Assembly Bill AB481 requires is us to document and investigate complaints about military equipment. And in 2022, we were happy to say there were no complaints and no investigations launched about the use of military equipment. And it also asked that we document any violations of policy, and there were no policy violations of AB481 in 2022. That concludes the military equipment use report. Like I said, it is on the website, and anybody can log on. It's been on there for several weeks, and we are happy to take any questions. Yes, ma'am.
I have 2. One is kind of meaningless, but I'm curious. How come drones don't last very long?
So I compare it to like a cordless drill, right? Cordless drill batteries only last, 3-4 years before they don't hold a charge. The same thing. Technology of a drone has increased so dramatically in the last couple of years, or a UAV, I'm sorry, that it's light years ahead of where it was 3 years ago. We were one of the first agencies in California to even use them, and so the drones we bought now, the technology is kind of outdated, antiquated, and the batteries don't last. So it's just a matter of that.
The bigger question is, this is considered military because, these are things that have been used for years.
Ma'am, you can buy these right off the shelf.
Right. So
So really what happened was the California legislature is the one that proposed this and identified what they considered to be military use equipment. But to your point, 100%. We've been using all of this equipment for many years, and but now there's just a reporting requirement because the California legislature has designated this as military use equipment. I think it's a little bit of a misnomer, right? Because I think when you say military equipment, majority of people think that we obtain this equipment from the military, and that is actually not true. The only thing that we have obtained from the military through the 1033 program is the M1 rifles that Lieutenant Bottoms spoke about, which we used early on in our urban rifle program, but we only use those in trainings right now. We also obtained one of our robots through the 1033 program, which is a military surplus program. And I think one or both of our peacekeepers we obtained through. And the benefit to that is that is equipment that is free to us. So there is a benefit to that program. Both of those peacekeepers, which would have been tens of thousands of dollars to buy on our own, came free. And like Lieutenant Bottom said, we use that for our Armadillo program to actually be a crime deterrent in our city. And a funny fact, and I'll throw myself under the bus a little bit. Years ago, when we first started doing this Armadillo program, I was not a fan of this program. I didn't think people were going to want these big armored vehicles parked in front of their neighborhoods when they have a drug dealing house or something there. Boy, was I wrong. We have multiple people waitlist with community members wanting these armadillos used as a crime deterrent in their neighborhoods.
Because I think, because it's a misnomer, I think people think there's howitzers and
Right.
machine guns and
Sure.
It'd be really cool if it was out there in the back lot, but no, there's nothing that exciting out there.
Yeah, it's almost like it needs to be rebranded in terms of the name, because it really is not military.
Well, and that's why I think these type of presentations, these type of community engagement events are extremely important because it will let the public understand that a little bit more, because I think just the name itself is scary, right? It's like, oh my gosh, are we militarizing the police? Well, no, the equipment that we have, the drones that we have, any 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid can go to Best Buy and buy the same type of drones that we're using, right? And so I think that's a very good question. I think it's important for the public to know that is, even though it's AB481 is talked about military equipment, that it does not mean, and majority of the time, it is not equipment that we obtain from the military.
I was really hoping to get like a F-16 fighter jet out in the back lot, but we had problems landing it, so no. Any other questions?
So any of the equipment that you did receive, did it have to be modified for use locally?
Yes and no. So some of the peacekeeper, like the peacekeeper vehicles out there, if we felt that like there was something that we couldn't use, we stripped it off of that. You know, you'll see it out there. It's been modified. Like the paint was modified. Things that could get ripped off or broken. You know, because it's basically a giant, you know, steel box that can't be destroyed because we park it and walk away. You know, we don't want somebody to destroy it or things like that. So it's been modified to do that. The robot that was purchased was not modified. Again, it's something that any citizen can buy.
Pretty much bulletproof.
The ones out in the back lot, yes, you'll see it's not bulletproof. There's, you know, certain calibers can damage it and things like that, but it's not. I think once you lay eyes on it, you'll see that this doesn't, you know, it's not what it's cracked up to be as far as that.
They're ballistic rated. The peacekeepers and the Lenco Bearcat that you'll see are all ballistic. It's only super high caliber, caliber weapons that would be able to penetrate that. So for all intents and purposes, what we see at our level, 9 times out of 10 is going to be bulletproof to protect our personnel.
The Lenco Bearcat out there had a 120 round shot at it a couple years ago, and luckily our officers were tucked in behind it, and nobody got hit. The Lenco, I mean, there was some paint chipped and things like that, but it was bulletproof that night. Any other questions? Any questions online? All right. Yes, ma'am.
And I saw the little information about today's session, but it said that the speaking would be, you would be explaining it at 12, so it kind of came a little late.
Oh, okay, okay. No problem, I apologize.
You have the vehicles from 11 to 12, and then
Okay, then that was backwards. It was, the meeting was from 11 to 12, and the viewing of the vehicles from 12 to 2, so.
And we're going to be around the entire time, so we can also come back in. We're going to continue to answer any questions online throughout this process, but we'll make sure that we come back in at 12 to see if there's any other questions.
Any other questions? Okay, so what we'll do now is we're going to leave the online questions open. The screen will just say something similar to the video feed has stopped, but we're still encouraging questions. Sergeant Gum, who is the expert in this field, will be answering questions online. But we're going to encourage everybody. We'll go out the back door here, and the volunteers will guide us out there. And you guys will be able to see, you get your hands on everything and ask us questions and check out what's out there. Okay? Everybody ready? All right.
Who's leading? You leading them out there, Pat?